Hello everyone, welcome to your Yin practice. My name is Krista and I will be guiding you through the next 60 minutes of class. Today I have here with me my student Teresa. I will be guiding her through different postures and shapes throughout this practice. I also might demo some of the shapes myself, and just to give some alternative variations of the shape. For our Yin practice today, we will be diving into the wood element. So the wood element is the beginning of the element cycle in the Taoist perspective. And the wood element is most prevalent in springtime. As we see with the new budding of flowers and the growth of vegetation and leaves returning on the trees, the wood element governs the budding of new life. The wood element governs the Gall Bladder and Liver meridians in Chinese traditional medicine. The wood element is associated with a physical imbalance of not being able to relax and an emotional imbalance of feeling frustrated as well as indecisive. The wood element is associated with the positive emotion of optimism. There are three principles that we follow in Yin. The first one being we want to approach each shape until we can find our edge. So that edge being that first place where our body is met with resistance. So it doesn't necessarily mean the depth of the pose, but more so that first place that you feel some kind of sensation where I might suggest you might feel that sensation. The second principle for Yin is to remain still and muscularly soft. So once we find our edge in whatever shape we come to, you then want to remain still and muscularly soft so that we can get into some of our yin tissues, such as our joints and our fascia. Once we remain still and we are muscularly soft, then we want to stay for time. And this is going to make lasting changes on those yin tissues. As always, once you're in each shape, if you notice the mind or the body becoming uncomfortable, that is okay. We want to try and sit with this throughout each shape. However, if you start to feel any pain or tingling or numbness in the joints or anything that I might kind of go through as we go through each shape, that is when you'd want to ease out of the pose and revisit a different variation that I might give you. So to begin today's class, we will start in Sukhasana, which is just a seated pose. And I'm going to invite you to sit up on either a block or a blanket. Just because if you notice that you feel like you're falling back, you want to sit up on something so that you can allow that tilt of the pelvis to make sure your spine and your body sits up nice and tall. And from here, just allow the eyes to close. Feel the sits bones become heavy against the earth. Just allow the shoulders to come stacked over your hips in your ears directly over your shoulders. And just take notice of how the mind is feeling today and how your body is feeling. Notice if there's anywhere that you may be holding on to tension throughout the body. Can you just breathe into that space and then let it go? Just feel the shoulders drip down your back. Bring a softness in through the muscles of your face. And just ask yourself, where in your life have you been needing to be more relaxed? Where in your life have you found that it's been a little bit hard for you to relax, and maybe you're dealing with some decisions, you're feeling a little indecisive? Where in your life can you invite more optimism, more hope? Just start to come aware of your breath. Notice what moves in the body as you breathe in and as you exhale. We're going to visit this snake breath in our pranayama practice today, which is a new breath in my practice, and I really come to enjoy it. So we'll start by breathing in through the nose and exhale, open the mouth and let it go. On your next inhale, breathe in through the nose and pause at the top of your inhale. And on your exhale, just open your lips slightly and think of keeping the teeth clenched together to make this hissing sound on your exhale. Breathe in through the nose. Pause at the top of the inhale. And once you feel that first sudden urge to take a breath, you let go with the hissing sound. And we'll do that 3 more times. One more time. Now just return back to your regular breath, breathing in and out through the nose. And just notice what feels different throughout the body. What feels different in your breath? And we'll just start to wake up the body very slowly, very mindfully. Just begin first by wiggling the fingers and the toes, just being very gentle to yourself. And when you feel ready to do so, you can just flutter open the eyes. And we'll start with our neck stretch. This is the first shape that we're going to visit in our yin class today. So I'm going to be doing the side that I'm actually saying I'm doing. It might look a little bit different in the camera because I'm not mirroring you. We're going to start by dropping your right ear down towards your right shoulder. And you want to feel a sensation happening through the side of the neck that's opening up. Just notice if any shoulders want to hike up towards the ears. Can you soften and just allow them to relax? If you're not quite feeling a sensation to intensify this, just gently extend that left arm off to the side. You can place your fingertips down onto the floor. Another option that might feel nice as well is bringing that right hand and just cradling your head, not trying to pull, but really thinking of allowing the weight of the hand to rest on top of your head. Here we're getting into the Gall Bladder meridian as it runs alongside the neck. If you start to feel any sensations in maybe the eyes or around the eyes, then it's possible that we're getting into the liver meridian as well. Now slowly start to turn your nose down towards your armpit. And you can release that right hand if this is enough of a stretch for you. Or you can keep the hand to the back of the head, and again, just using the weight of the hand to pull. That left arm can stay extended if you don't feel anything in this pose. You want to feel something more so in the back of the neck, as well as maybe in through the tops of the shoulders. I tend to feel it really in my upper shoulder area. You can also bend that left elbow and place it onto the low back. And we'll just stay here for another moment. Just being very gentle with the neck. Slowly start to slide your chin down towards the center of your chest, and then lift the head up to center. And just take notice of the difference between the left and the right side. And then we'll start to move into the opposite side. So gently lowering your left ear down towards your left shoulder. again, this might be enough of a sensation in through the opening of that right side, or you can walk your right fingertips, extending that arm off to the side. This might increase that sensation. You can also, again, take that left hand and gently just place it onto the top of the head. Just be very gentle. This is a very delicate area of the body. And again, we are finding this opening through the right side of the neck, as well as a compression in through the left side. So we're really getting that almost like a garden hose effect with this meridian. Now just preparing your body to move, gently turn and look towards your left armpit. And just be okay with that each side might feel a little bit different than the other. One side might not like the added pressure from the weight of the hand, so just honor your body and whatever you feel it needs. Again, if you want to intensify this stretch a little bit more, you can keep that right hand to the back of the head, or you can bend that right arm and just slide your forearm to come to your low back. Notice if there's any muscles that are holding on to tension. You want to see if you can let that go. And really ease into your edge. We'll just be here for another breath or two. Slowly start to slide your chin down towards the center of your chest. Just releasing the arms and lifting the head all the way back up. And just to kind of equalize our sides, we're going to do one last stretch through the neck. You're just simply going to drop the chin down towards your chest. And just take notice of the body. If it wants to kind of hunch forward or round forward, you really want to think of lifting up tall and just dropping your chin down. Nothing else should move here. To bring a little more sensation in through the back of the neck, you can interlace the fingers and just gently rest your hands to the back of your head. Feeling the weight of your arms pull your chin closer down towards your chest. And we'll just stay here for another breath. Start to release the hands first, and then slowly lift your head all the way back up. Let's just take 3 shoulder rolls, reaching your shoulders up towards your ears and then rolling them down and back. We'll do that 2 more times. Nice work. For our next shape, we're going to come into our butterfly pose. So I will invite you to remove a block or whatever you're sitting on just off to the side. You might still need them, but we'll see in a moment. So you want to bring the soles of the feet together, keeping your heels close to your bum. And for this pose, if you feel like you're really rounding back and like you feel like you're going to fall back, that's when I'm going to invite you to bring either a block or a pillow underneath your sits bones. And then from here, you can grab a hold of your feet, sit up nice and tall. If this is really intense and you find that you're engaging the muscles in the inner thighs to try and keep the legs lifted, then maybe you just slide some blocks underneath the knees. And you want to still feel a sensation happening in through the inner thighs. And this is targeting the liver meridian. From here, if you don't quite feel a sensation, maybe you start to lean forward. And then from here, you can also utilize your blocks by placing one block maybe on your feet or on the floor, somewhere wherever is most convenient for you. And you can just stack the blocks in a way that you can rest your head down. Again, just notice if you're engaging any muscles to hold this shape. See if you can invite your body to release and let go in this shape. See if you can bring a little bit of softness into the breath. If we are able to calm our breath, we are then able to calm the body, and we are able to calm the mind. And just notice where your mind likes to wander off to. Notice what emotions are coming up for you. And we'll start to prepare the body to move. Just start by becoming aware of your inhale through the nose And your exhale. And using your hands, just slowly start to walk all the way up, stacking your shoulders back over your hips. And just removing any props from out of the way. Just using your hands on the outskirts of your knees, just gently close your knees up like a book, just being very, very gentle. And from here, a nice little counter pose just for a moment is to just wrap your arms around your knees and just gently lower your head onto the knees to come into a little ball. Just take a few deep breaths, sending the breath in through the back body. And we'll start to move into our next series of postures, which will be our toe squat and our ankle stretch. So for this next one, you'll come to face the top of your mat. Roll over the shins and come into a tabletop position. You're going to tuck the toes under and start to walk your hands back, sitting your hips on top of your heels. Yeah, and you can keep your hands down if this is a huge sensation in through the feet, or you can start to walk your hands on the tops of the thighs, and you can stay there. Just having a peek at your baby toes. You want to make sure those toes get tucked under because they tend to be forgotten. Sometimes they can't quite reach the floor, but you can actually physically go in and think of tucking those last few toes under to make sure you are getting all of the toes incorporated into this stretch. And for this pose, we're getting into the beginning of the liver meridian as well as the end of our gallbladder meridian. So we're not going to hold these too long because this pose can be quite intense. And we'll start to come out of this pose, just being very, very gentle. Just start to walk your hands forward and then untuck the toes. Reach for a blanket or a pillow if you have. You might need it for this next part. And you're going to slowly start to sit your hips back onto the heels and then slide that blanket underneath the knees. Yeah, this is going to bring a little bit more height so we get a bigger stretch in through the top of the ankle. And from here, maybe you stay upright or you can start to walk your hands back behind you. So the goal is not so much to lean back, but to be able to lean back, but as well as lift the knees off of the floor. So the sensation should be felt in the tops of the feet. If you feel like you need more height, then you can roll your blanket up a little bit more. How's that feel? Good. And we'll just stay here for one more breath. And slowly begin to come out of this pose by walking your shoulders to stack back over your hips, and then we'll walk forward. Just remove any props from underneath you. And we're going to revisit the toe stretch. So we're going to do this 2 more times. So lean forward, tuck the toes under, and then sit the hips back onto the heels. And again, just adjusting the toes to make sure all those little toes get accounted for. And just notice what is happening in the mind in this pose. These poses can be very intense. Notice if there's anywhere that you maybe engaging your muscles. Notice how the body reacts to this discomfort. And slowly we'll start to ease out of this pose. Again, walking your hands forward, untucking the toes, and then reach for your blanket to bring underneath the knees. If you find that it's really uncomfortable to sit onto the heels and your tops of your ankles don't quite go flat, you can also slide a blanket underneath that natural curve of your ankles. You also might need to prop your sits bones up on a block or a bolster if, again, the flexion that's happening in the knees is a bit too much. Can you start to focus your mind back into your breath? We'll slowly start to ease out of this pose, just being very, very gentle, removing the blanket or prop underneath the knees if you have it. We'll do this one more time, so we'll visit our toe stretch one more time. Again, shifting your weight forward, coming onto the toes, and then sitting your sits bones onto the heels. Now, if you are quite comfortable in this pose, a way to kind of amplify this stretch would be to slide either a blanket or a bolster underneath your sits bones on tops of the heels. We'll stay here for one more breath in. And then exhale, let's release out of this pose and come back to our final ankle stretch. Just removing any props from out of the way. We'll start to shift our weight back, again using a blanket underneath the knees if you need to. In my practice, I really like using a blanket, but if it's comfortable for you to completely lean back and just hold on to the knees and find a little balance point, that's also accessible for you as well. And remember, in Yin, we're not so much worried about the shape of the pose necessarily, but more so the sensation that you get in the pose and where you feel the sensation. And just preparing our body to move, start to lift up and sliding any props from underneath you. Come into a tabletop. And just to release the feet a little bit, I just like to untuck the toes and just gently tap the tops of the feet onto your mat. So we're going to come to sit on our sits bones again. We're going to visit our shoelace pose. So we'll both face the camera for this one. And to start, you're going to bring your left leg underneath the right and keeping your left heel close to your bum or your hip. And then that right leg is going to come on top and you're going to cross that leg. Again, think of pulling that right heel towards your hip, thinking of stacking the knees one on top of the other. And if you've done this and you think, doesn't quite feel right, sometimes I like to just lean my weight forward, coming onto my hands and knees, driving that right knee in front of the left, and then slowly sitting back down. And from here, we want to feel something on the outer glutes or the outer hips. And you might feel enough here, or you can start to slide your feet out so they come in a straight line from ankle to ankle. That's one way that you might increase the sensation. For me, I tend to not really feel anything in this pose. So for me, what I like to do is think of rocking my pelvis forward and then slowly starting to lean forward. And then you can utilize your blocks just to rest your head. If you notice that this top knee is really hiked up, then you might use a block in between the knees. Another thing you might notice, if this pose is really uncomfortable, you might be leaning to one side and you can't quite get both sits bones down onto the ground. You want to take a pillow or a block and you want to slide it underneath the left sits bone. So if you see if I do that, then it naturally helps that right hip to drop down and then my pelvis stays level. So you can play around with this in your practice and see what version of this shape feels best for you. And once you find a variation that you are able to come to your edge, feeling that sensation in through the outer hips, then you want to remain still. We are targeting the gallbladder meridian here as we Bring the sensation in through the outer hips, as well as we're finding a little bit of a compression in through the liver meridian as we kind of squeeze our legs together and cross our legs. And just remember, the whole goal of this shape is not necessarily to fold forward, but more so to feel that sensation. Notice if there's any tension or contracting happening in the neck, in the shoulders. Can you focus on your breath and just allow the muscles to release? You'll just be here for just another moment. If you have folded forward, just start to slowly walk all the way up, stacking your shoulders back over your hips. Just removing the props just off to the side, we're going to reach for our bolster. Keeping the shape with the legs, you're going to slide that bolster so that the short edge just comes in line with that left hip. And you're going to bring your forearm to rest down onto that bolster. We're going to find a side bend into the shoelace pose. So that right arm can come to just rest on your hip, or you can start to extend it overhead, maybe leaning over towards that left side. For me, I tend to hold a lot of tension in my neck, so I personally like to just cradle the back of my head and then look up towards my elbow. So you can find a variation of this little shoelace side bend that feels best in your body. Here again, we're still getting into the gallbladder meridian with our hips, but as well as that side body. We won't stay in this pose for too long. And to come out, just be very, very gentle, just guiding your shoulders back over your hips. And just keep the bolster there. We're going to come into our deer pose. So that top leg is just going to slide off to the side. You might want to lean all the way over to the left side, just so you can sweep that knee to come in line with the hip. So you want to think of finding 90-degree angles in the legs from your hip to your knee to your ankle, and as well for the back leg from your hip to your knee to your ankle. If it's really uncomfortable for you to find this degree with the legs, that's okay. Just you can slide the heels in closer and the knees in closer together. Also, leaning off to one side just relieves that pressure out of this right leg. So we're going to find a twist in our deer. So you're going to square your chest towards your bolster. So bringing one hand to either side of the bolster. Maybe you stay here and this is enough of a twist for you, or you can start to lower your chest down to rest onto the bolster. And you have the option of bringing your left ear down to the bolster, To find a greater twist throughout the spine, maybe you bring your right ear towards the bolster, and this will create a twist all the way down from the sacrum all the way up through the spine as well as the cervical spine. Just staying with our deep belly breaths here. And just notice how the breath changes in this twist. It feels a little bit more restricted. And we'll start to prepare the body to move. Just invite a deep inhale through the nose to begin. And then exhale to let it go. And slowly start to use your hands just to peel yourself off of the bolster. Now sweep that front arm back behind you. Just finding some windshield wiper motions with the knees. You can lean back to the hands and just allow the knees to fall from one side to the other. And just finish evening out your sides. And we'll come to sit and face the camera again, and we will find both of those shapes on the other side. So this time we're going to slide that right leg, so the right heel comes towards our bum. That's going to be the leg that's underneath. And then that top leg is going to come on top. Again, thinking of stacking the knees one on top of the other. I always like to kind of shift my weight forward, coming into that little tabletop variation, adjusting my knees, and then sitting my hips down. And again, just playing with whatever variation feels good for you on this side. And it might look different than what you did on the other side, because both hips, one might be a little bit more open than the other, one might be a little bit more restricted. So again, the goal isn't necessarily to fold forward, but you want to come into a position where you feel a sensation in through the outer hips. So maybe you extend the feet away from the body. If you notice that you are leaning off to that right hip a lot, then you want to bring that block underneath the right sits bone. If you notice your knee is coming really high up, maybe you bring a block just to support it. And if your knees don't quite cross one on top of the other, that's perfectly okay. Just use a block to rest your knee. So as soon as you find your variation, we will come into our stillness. Just really paying attention to the sensations that come up for you in the body. If you feel any tingling or numbness in the feet, especially if you're folded forward, then maybe you ease out of that posture a little bit. Notice if the mind wants you to fidget or adjust your clothing. Can you try and fight that urge and just sit with whatever is? We will stay here for just a few more moments. And in your own time, just bringing your awareness back into the body to slowly start to ease out of this pose. Remove any props that you have out of the way. And we're going to place our bolster this time on the opposite side to our right hip. And then from here, just resting that forearm down onto the bolster, we're going to find our little side bend variation. So that left hand can come to the low back. You can start to extend it overhead, maybe reaching over towards that right side. Or you can also cradle the back of the head, just because I tend to use a lot of muscles to keep my head lifted. The head can be very heavy, especially if you're trying to completely relax the body. I'm just preparing the body to move, just gently pushing that bottom hand into the floor to lift yourself all the way back up to that seated pose. Now we're going to come into our frog pose, and the best way to do that is just to lean all the way over onto that right side and then sweeping that left leg behind you so that you come into those relatively 90-degree angles with the legs. Keeping that bolster beside your right hip. And again, whatever you did on this side, on the opposite side, it's going to feel different on this side. So Start to square your chest towards your bolster. And then maybe you stay here, or maybe you start to lower the chest down to rest on the bolster. You can, again, bring that right ear towards the bolster, or if you want more of a twist throughout the whole spine, especially your cervical spine, then maybe you bring your left ear to the bolster. If the bolster is quite far away, you can also double up your bolsters, or maybe bring some blocks or blankets to stack on top of your bolster. And just notice how the breath is moving in this twist. We are really targeting a lot of the gallbladder meridians through our hips. If you feel some sensation still in the hips, as well as through our twist, as the gallbladder meridian runs along the sides of the body. And also, depending on how you have your head placed, if you have your left ear down, then you're also stimulating the gallbladder meridian as well. We're really finding almost like this ringing out, like a garden hose effect. We'll just stay here for another breath. And in your own time, just gently push the floor away from you to peel your chest off of your mat. Sweep that front arm back behind you, and we'll just find some windshield wipers back and forth just to release our hips from these two poses. We're going to come to lay down on our back. And just at first, just taking notice of how your body is feeling. How are your hips feeling? We're going to visit our second last pose, which is our banana pose. So for this pose, we'll start by walking our feet to the bottom right corner of our mat. And then gently pick up the shoulders and then slide them to kind of square the top right corner of your mat. And then the arms can sweep overhead. And you can grab a hold of your left wrist or reach for opposite elbows, or you can just allow the arms to hang where they are. And then you can cross the left ankle over top of the right, coming into this banana shape with the body. If you notice that after a while that your hands might become numb, or you might feel some tingling in the hands, then you might just bring a bolster underneath the arms, just to elevate the arms. Did you want to keep that there?
No, it's okay.
Yeah. And as we're here, you can just allow the eyes to close, really feeling a side body stretch all the way from the left ankle to the outer seam of your pant leg, coming in through the hips, through the side body, maybe in through the armpit, and all the way up the arm. So this analogy of that garden hose, if our meridians tend to maybe have a knot or are a little bit blocked, by essentially creating these compressions in through the body and elongations, we're essentially creating a garden hose effect, but with our meridians. So if you can think of a knot in a garden hose, it tends to block the water, block the energy, or in the case of our meridians, our prana. By kind of working through some compression and elongation of these meridians, we're allowing this knot to unfold, and it allows the water, or our chi, or our prana, this life force energy, to flow through the body. And if these gall bladder and liver meridians are blocked in any way, the ways that it might show up is a sense of feeling frustrated and indecisive and having an inability to relax. And if we're able to find this opening and release through our meridians, then maybe we are able to invite more hope into our lives. Maybe we can make these decisions a little bit easier. Maybe the feeling of being frustrated is replaced with the feeling of being hopeful. Now we'll start to prepare our body to move. So just being very gentle, begin by uncrossing the legs, releasing the arms if you have. And then first start by walking the feet back to center, and then think of tucking your chin, lifting your chest, and coming back to center. You can just place your arms by your side just for a moment and just notice the difference between the right and the left side. Notice if there's any similarities or differences. Maybe you notice how the breath is moving compared to the left and the right side. Now we'll visit this pose on the opposite side. So this time, walking your feet over to the bottom left corner of your mat. And then shimmying your shoulders to square the top left corner of your mat. And the right leg can now cross over the left. And you can start to extend the arms overhead. And again, you can use that right hand to grab a hold of the left wrist, or maybe reach for opposite elbows, whatever is more accessible into your body today and whatever feels good. And just feeling the breath as it travels in through the body. Notice as you inhale how it might intensify the sensation in through the side of the body. Maybe start to think of where in your life that you can invite opportunity for new growth. Is it in your career, or maybe in a friendship, a relationship? Maybe you want to invite some personal growth. And we'll start to ease out of this side, just being very gentle. Start by uncrossing the legs and releasing the arms. We'll start with the feet, just slowly walking your feet back to center, and then picking up the shoulders and coming back to lay directly center on your mat. And we'll just do one more pose to just kind of rebound this shape, which is our happy baby pose. So start by drawing the knees in towards the chest. You can hug the knees tight in close towards you. Give yourself a little hug. And then to find your happy baby, you're going to reach for the big toe with your peace fingers, or the outside or inside arches of your feet. And then slowly start to lift your feet up towards the ceiling. At the same time, allowing the knees, the weight of the knees, to drop down towards the floor. Now, if you can't quite reach your feet, then maybe you just bring the hands to the backs of the thighs and just allow the feet to hang heavy here. And it's okay if your low back starts to lift away from the ground here. Again, we're not so focused on alignment. And just allow this pose to release, and we'll settle into our final Shavasana. So for our Shavasana, we're going to extend the legs long, bringing your feet about hip distance apart or wider. Utilizing any props that, if you know you like to use props in your Shavasana, then you can choose to use those. So allow the shoulder blades to tuck underneath your back. And I'm going to invite you to flip the palms up. If you think that you might need to receive, you feel like you need to receive more hope or more optimism in your life. And you can flip the palms downward to really think of grounding down into the earth, and if you need a sense of feeling grounded in this time of the wood element. And just allow the body to completely be still. Notice how the breath moves throughout the body after completing your yin practice. Notice if there's anywhere in the body that it might be moving a little bit more freely. Now I will invite you to stay exactly where you are if you want to stay in your Shavasana for a little bit longer. But for those who want to close out their practice, I'm just going to invite you to start to bring some movement in through the fingers and the toes. And just allow the head to rock from side to side. In your own time, come to roll all the way onto the left side of the body. And just using that top arm, we'll come to sit up into a seated position. So any comfortable seat of your choice. And you're sitting up nice and tall, keeping the eyes slightly closed. Let's take a big inhale through the nose. And exhale to let it go. And we'll just revisit our snake breath. We'll just do 3 rounds. So inhale through the nose, hold. At the top of the inhale, pause. And then when you feel ready to let go of the exhale, just open the mouth slightly, keeping your teeth together to let out a hissing sound. Move in your own time. Last one. And just return back to your regular breathing. Bring your hands through heart center. And may the light in me honor and cherish the light that is in you. Namaste.